Walton had the highest accidental death rate in the whole of England. And for whatever reason it tickled my sense of humour, and this is the result of such. In a sleepy rural town, somewhere east of the Middle, a mysterious phenomenon was causing a great riddle, as in the space of just 1 week, at least 4 deaths had occurred, and the nature of these happenings was completely absurd. So an investigation began to gain the facts of the matter in a bid to reassure the town from the spread of idle chatter, and a common link was found between all those that had died and was linked back to a factory that made the pork pie. It started on a Monday with Billy, the head pork chopper. He'd worked there over many years and was a dab hand with a trotter. But Billy had a problem, common asthma and allergies. And on this fatal summer's day, he let out one almighty sneeze, the force of which was way too much. He lost his sturdy grip. He watched his cleaver taking flight as through the air it flicked. It landed in between the eyes of poor old Janet Brown, who packed up one last pie of pork before dropping to the ground. The very next day, in Department 6, was Linda from Crusts and Pastry, whose job it was to mix the ingredients to make the outer casings tasty. But Linda had a secret vice. She loved the toxic powder, and after taking way too much, well, her judgment would tend to cloud her. She'd been out to a party and got to work a little high, so to try and make it through the day, she racked up a cheeky line. But instead of snorting crack cocaine, she snuffed the baking soda. The result was catastrophic. The papers called it the head exploder. Finally, a couple of days later, a lovely old couple took a nap. But not before tucking into their favourite daytime snack. They were found by their next-door neighbours in a god-awful state, with a remainder of a pork pie left sitting on a plate. The evidence was bagged up to be examined and took away, and Mr. and Mrs. Ashcombe were buried the next day. Cause of death was then returned. Food poisoning was to blame, as not only had they eaten pork, they'd eaten Linda's brain. So the investigation concluded that yes, although coincidental, no foul play was cited, as these deaths were accidental. So the next time that you're chomping on your favourite pork pie, just spare a thought, say a prayer for all those that had died. Right, okay, next one. You've either got the option of a slightly darker tale about a murderous joyrider and the complexities of loving them, or you've got a slightly more softer, uplifting tale of perhaps finding oneself. So, go on, what? The what? Joyride. You want the joyride? Okay, cool. Right, again, it's a dark tale, and it is literally the complexities of loving a murderous joyrider. The headlights flickered, somewhere in the distance. Compulsion takes over. There's no time for resistance. He takes his stance upon the old highway, beats pulsing through his body as he stalks a known prey. He knows what he's about to do is a cataclysmic crime, but no longer does he have control from the fury deep inside. He wishes he could look away, just like he tells his girl, but the beast just grows inside of him, the oyster to his pearl. The flash of lights draws closer as he walks into its path, and a coolness now takes over to disguise his fiery wrath. He's been here many times before, he's seen this act play out. His timing's a perfection, no concessions left for doubt. The only thing that troubles him inside his darkened mind is the sense that she feels so let down and all he leaves behind. As eventually when he makes it home, she'll ignore his coloured clothes, but he knows that he will hurt her too on the old highway that he roams. A car of two approaches him, a Ford Cortina brown,
just the kind who likes to drive who flags the passers down. His unsuspecting victims are an old man and his wife, whilst winding down their window are confronted with his knife. No time for screams or begging, or just take the car, they plead. The silver lightning strikes them, and with burning flames they bleed. He drags their bodies out the door, rolls them in a ditch. A smile spreads wide upon his face, another triumph without a hitch. And with his foot pressed to the pedal, the engine starts to roar, and in his Ford Cortina out on the old highway he tore. He felt exhilaration as the wind whipped through his hair, cruising at the red line without a single care. No regard for lives he'd stolen or the families left to cry. Those thoughts would come to haunt him as the time would pass on by. It was just about this moment and the freedom that he found, as no longer would he feel that when he journeyed again and found. He'd feel a sense of sadness, guilt mixed with the pain, that the promises he'd made his girl had always been in vain. But this time it was different, it really was his last. The feds were catching up with him and the shadows of his past. As every time the door knocked or the chime rang from the bell, he knew his freedom could be taken inside a tiny cell. So he pulled into a clearing, and with a cloth he cleaned the marks. He had to make it home before the sun rose from the dark. He struck a single tiny match, danced amongst the flames, inferno set to banish all his demons filled with shame. He'd go back with dark conscience, clear of promises anew, to see his girl and tell her all. Inside, excitement grew. Now she was sat there waiting at the bottom of the stairs. To expect that she should look away was anything but fair. She knew what he'd been doing. She knew when he'd be back. She couldn't take it anymore, so a suitcase she had packed. If only it was different. If only he could change, but he'd hurt her one too many times with his behaviour so deranged. To think of all those people that he didn't need to kill for the pleasure of a joyride that would give him such a thrill. She'd never begin to understand his sense of satisfaction, so with a sudden heavy heart, it was time to take some action. Finally he made it home and came up towards the house. She picked the shining object up and sat quietly as a mouse. He turned the key inside the lock, walked on through the door. She looked him point blank in the face, then shot him to the floor. A sea of red surrounded him as he drew his final breath, and a devilish smile took over as she watched him to his death. Now she'd become the monster, and he had been set free. She dragged his body in the boot, in the ignition she placed the key. She'd take this final journey, never again would look away, to finish all that he'd begun out on the old highway. Thank you.
Quickly, just a little bit of context surrounding this. It's actually based on a true story of mine, and it takes me back about 15 years ago to a time where I lived in America, and I got actually bitten by a spider, and in turn I ended up meeting perhaps a really truly phenomenal woman in very strange circumstances. So this is my story, called Carly Fever. It started with an itch, then a scratch, and then a twitch, and then came the catch as I felt it crawl from out of my trouser to reveal the emergence of a satisfied spider. Half an hour later, my knee was the size of a door. Sweat beads were dripping, so the ambulance was called. I was took to a hospital, to a 4-bedded room, and it was there that she entered in an elegant swoon. You knew she was special from the clothes that she wore and the sweet-smelling perfume that oozed from her pores. And I remembered thinking that she looked quite expensive when in came the boy, looking rather more pensive. Yet, still he floated on crutches to the bed by a chair as I watched in sheer wonder of this mysterious pair. Because, oh, he was beautiful, stylish and cool. Whether it was him or the poison, I'd started to drool and I could feel the fire burning up through my face. Limbs started aching and pulse started to race. And then the room span as I looked over to smile. But instead came the vomit, then it went black for a while.
I don't really know just how long I was out when I was handed some water to swill out my mouth as I'd started to wake somewhat dazed and confused, with a nurse standing by me looking slightly bemused. She pulled back the curtain as she said in a whisper, "That's Carly Simon, Ben her son, and the other one's his sister." Oh my God, I thought, it's Carly Simon. I love the song she sings. I feel the earth move, natural woman. Oh no, hang on, that's Carole King. So who the bloody hell's Carly Simon, and why do I recognise her name? Oh yeah, she's the one that sang the song about Warren Beatty being vain, and she'd been married to James Taylor, so hang on. If he's called Ben, and she's his mum, oh my God, I'm lying in bed next to James Taylor's son. Well, I'd seen the fire and he'd seen the rain, and I was staring at the face of sweet baby James, and he looked like his dad as I remembered him then, on the cover of his album in the Desert Island 10. Imagine if this was our cute mate. Oh man, that would be so mad. If me and Ben got married, then James Taylor would be my dad. But who was I kidding? I was hooked up to a drip, but a boy had seen me puking, and I had to swell from knee to hip, and dressed in hotel uniform of purple, blue and green. I truly was a sight to bear, but not one to be seen. But ever in my optimistic mind, or more likely drug-fueled state, I considered that his plastered leg was indeed my lucky break, as he'd likely be on morphine, so this could be my only chance to take full advantage and charm my way into his pants. And with cajoling thoughts and fantasies running loose inside my head, I was distracted by the overexcited couple lying in the opposite bed, as they'd been chatting to Carly for a little while now about some effective pain relievers, but whatever they'd been taking hadn't helped cure their starstruck fever. So for me, the day was getting just a little too surreal, and could never have imagined that from a spider bite ordeal, I'd be waking up in a hospital bed with my idol's son and ex. But nothing could prepare me for what was about to happen next. Oh, Carly, we just love you so. Would it be so awfully wrong to ask you if you'd sing to us one of your favourite songs? Oh, no, she didn't. But yes, she really did. Do these people have no shame? But with only a hint of irony, Carly said, "Sure, I got just the refrain." As she sauntered over to my bed, clasped my IV stand, I swear she threw me a cheeky wink, and then in a sultry tone she sang, "Well, he walked in to the party like he was walking onto a yacht." And as I lay there, in complete shock and amazement, all I could think was, oh my God, as she started what appeared to be an unprompted chain reaction, and I'm lying in the centre of this melodic interaction, as first to join was the overexcited couple, followed by Ben, his sister, and then the nurse. And the volume was getting louder as they reached the second verse, as not only were they singing, there was clapping and finger clicking. As I watched the events unfolding, I actually thought I was totally tripping. But nobody does it better than Carly's hypnotising me, and I was succumbing to this contagious fever, and it unknowingly began to sway. When something deep inside of me took over all my inhibitions, I thought, oh, sod it, hey, just join a bit of one in a chance rendition. So as I finally began to appreciate having Carly Simon singing at my side, I glanced an apologetic smile, then sung my heart out with shameless pride. Clouds in my coffee, and if you know the words, please join me in the words, it's embarrassing. So babe, I bet you think this song is about you, you're so babe, so babe. I bet you think this song is about you, don't you, don't you? And as the climax reached its crescendo, everyone's delight was plain to see. But to this very day, I take no shame in admitting, I think Carly sang that song for me. Thank you.
I feel free. I feel free. feel free.